The loud scream of a siren made Isolde Matthews jump. She quickly put her hands over, feeling nervous. The red and blue lights of the police car flashed brightly, shining off the wet sidewalk. Her heart was beating fast as she watched helplessly while the officers took what little was left of her things from the small apartment she had lived in for 5 years. "Please," she begged, her voice shaky, "I just need a few more weeks. My baby will be born soon." The older officer looked at her with pity but didn't say anything. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "Orders are orders." Isolde felt tears running down her face, mixing with the light rain falling on that gray, chilly morning in Chicago. At 32 years old and 8 months pregnant, she never imagined she would be in this situation, alone, without a home, and about to have a baby. As she stood there, a tall man named Caius Roth walked by on the other side of the street. He was 38 years old and worked as the CEO of a big technology company. He was on his way to an important meeting, but something about Isolde made him stop and look. Maybe it was the way she looked so sad, or how she protected her belly with her arms. Without thinking, Caius crossed the street and walked up to the officers. "Excuse me," he said in a strong voice, getting the officer's attention. "What's happening here?" The younger officer quickly explained that Isolde hadn't paid her rent for months, and now she had to leave. Caius listened carefully, his blue eyes on Isolde's worried face. "How much does she owe?" he asked. Isolde, surprised that a stranger was helping, said quickly, "You don't have to." But Caius raised his hand gently, asking her to be quiet. "Let me help," he said. Over the next few minutes, Caius made a phone call and paid the rent that Isolde owed. He also arranged for her to stay in the apartment for 3 more months. Once everything was settled and the officers left, Isolde found herself standing alone with the man who had helped her. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. Caius smiled, and it made his serious face seem a little warmer. "You don't need to thank me," he said kindly. "We all need help sometimes." As they looked at each other, something seemed to connect between them. It was like a little spark, or maybe the beginning of something more. "What's your name?" Caius asked gently. "Isolde Matthews," she answered. She noticed that his face changed a little when she said her name. "Matthews," Caius repeated. "That name sounds familiar. Are you from Chicago?" Isolde shook her head and smiled sadly. "No, I'm from a small town in Illinois. I came to Chicago a few years ago, hoping for a new start." Caius nodded slowly, like he was thinking about what she said. "Well, Isolde," he said finally, "it seems like you're still trying to find that new beginning. If you want, I can help you even more. Maybe with a job. How would you like that?" Isolde was surprised. She looked down at her belly and then back at Caius. I don't know what to say. You've already done so much for me, and you don't even know me." Caius smiled again, but this time his smile was a little sad. "Sometimes helping others helps us, too. What do you think? Would you like to talk more over coffee? We can talk about your job options and maybe get to know each other better." Isolde thought for a moment. She had been hurt before, and trusting people was hard for her, but there was something in Caius's eyes that made her want to trust him. "Okay," she said softly. "A coffee sounds nice." As they walked to a nearby cafe, neither of them knew how much their lives were about to change. It was like fate had brought them together for a reason. When they entered the warm cafe, the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. They sat at a quiet table in the corner, away from the other people. Caius carefully pulled out a chair for Isolde, and though it was a small gesture, it made her feel special. "So, Isolde," Caius began kindly, "tell me more about yourself. How did you end up in this situation?" Isolde took a deep breath and gently rubbed her belly. "It's a long story," she said with a small smile, "but I'll give you the short version." She explained how she left her small town in Illinois to find a new life in Chicago. She talked about the difficult jobs she had, the money problems, and then how the unexpected pregnancy made everything harder. Caius listened closely, his eyes focused on her, understanding every word. There was something in her story that made him feel like he had heard it before, but he couldn't figure out why. "What about the father of the baby?" Caius asked carefully, worried he might ask something too personal. Isolde looked down, her face sad. "He doesn't know. It was just one night, and I don't even know his real name." Caius nodded, understanding, though he still felt a strange feeling inside. He pushed it aside and focused on helping her. "I'd like to help you, not just with money, but to help you rebuild your life. My company is always looking for good people, and I think you could do great work with us." Isolde's eyes grew wide. "But why? You don't know me. How can you trust me?" Caius smiled again. "Let's just say I have a good feeling about you, and everyone deserves a second chance, don't they?" They spent more time talking about the job offer, and Isolde felt hope growing inside her. For the first time in a long time, she saw a future where things could get better. Caius, on the other hand, felt a protective instinct toward Isolde that he had never felt before. When they said goodbye, promising to meet again to finalize the job details, both of them knew that something important had started. What had started as a chance meeting on the street was turning into something much more. Isolde walked back to her apartment, now sure that she would have a place to stay. She couldn't believe how much her life had changed in just a few hours. Caius, as he drove back to his office, couldn't stop thinking about their meeting, feeling like something bigger was at play. The first chapter of their story had been written, but it was only the beginning. They both had no idea how their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't even imagine. In the weeks after meeting, Isolde started working at Caius's company, Roth. She was learning a lot, though she still felt a little out of place in the busy office. One morning, while she was organizing papers for a big meeting, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. "Isolde, are you okay?" asked Felicity, a friendly coworker, noticing her discomfort. "I'm fine," Isolde said with a smile, though she felt nervous. "It's just a Braxton Hicks contraction." Felicity looked worried. "Maybe you should go home and rest. I'm sure Mr. Roth would understand." Hearing Caius's name made Isolde feel thankful, but also guilty. Ever since she started working there, people had been curious about how a pregnant woman with no experience had ended up working for the CEO. "No, I'm fine," Isolde said quickly. "I have a meeting with Mr. Roth soon. I can't miss it." When Isolde entered Caius's office, he smiled warmly at her, but she could tell he was still concerned. He looked at her with a mix of care and something else that she couldn't figure out. "Isolde, please sit down," Caius said, pointing to the chair in front of his desk. "How are you feeling today?" "I'm fine, thank you," she replied, trying not to show that she still felt uncomfortable. "I've brought the reports you asked for the meeting with the investors." Caius nodded, but his eyes stayed on her. "Isolde, there's something we need to talk about. It's something personal." Isolde's heart started beating faster. "What's wrong? Did I do something wrong?" "No, it's not that," Caius quickly said. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "It's about your baby's father." Isolde froze. "What? What do you mean?" Caius turned around to face her. His blue eyes were serious. "Isolde, I think I'm the father of your child." The silence was so loud, Isolde felt like she couldn't breathe. She remembered a party months ago, a lot of drinking, and a kind man with blue eyes. "How do you know?" she finally asked. Caius walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, and took out a photo. He handed it to Isolde, who took it with shaky hands. In the picture, she saw herself laughing with a man she now knew was Caius. The date in the corner of the photo showed it was the night her baby was made. "I wasn't sure at first," Caius said, his voice soft, "but the more I got to know you, the more you seemed familiar. Then last night I found this picture. It was from the launch party for our new product. I didn't remember much from that night because I'd been drinking, but now..." Isolde looked at the photo, then at her belly, and finally at Caius. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who you were when we met that day. Caius knelt beside her, taking her hands gently. I believe you, Isolde, and I want you to know that, no matter what happened in the past, I'm here now for you and for our son. Just then, the baby kicked. Isolde let out a small sound and put her hand on her belly. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Caius asked. Isolde smiled through her tears. Yes, he's just kicking. I think he knows his father's here. Hesitantly, she took Caius's hand and put it on her stomach. His eyes widened as he felt the baby move. My God, he whispered, amazed. It's incredible. For a moment, they stayed like that, holding hands, both realizing that their lives were changing. Finally, Caius broke the silence. Isolde, I know this is a big surprise for both of us, but I want you to know I'll do whatever's best for you and our son. I don't expect anything from you except what you're willing to give, but I'll be here to support you both in every way I can. Isolde looked into Caius's eyes. She saw hope and fear in them, just like she felt. I don't know what to say. This is all so strange. We don't have to figure everything out right now, Caius said. We have time to talk about it together if you want. Just then, there was a knock at the door. It was Felicity, reminding them about the meeting with the investors that was starting soon. Damn, the meeting, Caius said, running his hand through his hair. He looked at Isolde with concern. Can you come? We can reschedule if you need some time. Isolde took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. No, I can do it. We have to keep up appearances, right? Caius nodded, admiring her strength. Right, but after that, we need to talk more. There's a lot to figure out. They both left the office and went to the meeting. Isolde felt tired after it was over, and she couldn't stop thinking about what Caius had said. As the executives left, Caius walked up to Isolde. You were amazing in there, he said softly. Leaning in so only she could hear, he added. But now we need to talk. How about dinner tonight? Isolde thought for a moment. Part of her wanted to be alone to think, but she knew that would make things harder later. All right, she said quietly, but can we go somewhere private? I don't want people to gossip about us. Caius understood. I know a place. A quiet restaurant in Lincoln Park. I'll meet you there at 8 p.m. 2 hours later, Isolde sat at a small table in a cozy restaurant. The lights were soft and it was peaceful, but Isolde couldn't relax. Caius came in right on time, looking nervous. After they ordered, an uncomfortable silence filled the air. Caius started playing with his napkin. I think we have a lot to talk about, he said. Isolde took a deep breath. Yes, we do. Where do we start? How about the beginning? Caius suggested. That night, do you remember more? Isolde closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about that night. Not much, she said slowly. I remember being at the party, drinking too much and being with someone, you. But it's all blurry. I remember that too, Caius said. I'm sorry, Isolde, if I'd known. Don't apologize, Isolde interrupted. We were two adults who made a mistake. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake after all, she added, looking down at her belly. She put a hand over it. Caius looked at her, his eyes soft. Isolde, I want you to know, no matter how this happened, I'm here for you and our son. I don't expect us to fall in love right away, but I want to be there for the baby. Isolde felt tears in her eyes. Caius, I appreciate it more than you know, but I'm scared. What if it doesn't work out? What if it hurts your work or your reputation? Caius reached across the table and gently took her hand. My reputation doesn't matter more than my son or you. I know this will be hard, but I'm ready to face it. The waiter came by with their food, and the conversation stopped for a moment. When they were alone again, Isolde brought up something else that worried her. What about work? People are already talking about how I got the job so quickly. If they find out about us... Caius thought for a moment. You're right, we need to be careful. Maybe we should move you to another department so you don't work directly with me. That way, people won't think we're showing favoritism. Isolde nodded. She was relieved but also a little sad. She liked working closely with Caius, but it felt like the right thing to do. "What about the baby?" she asked softly. "How will we handle things when the baby's born?" Caius leaned forward, his eyes full of determination. "I want to be there, Isolde, for every appointment, for every important moment. And when he's born, we'll tell him the truth, slowly, when the time's right." As they continued talking, Isolde felt both scared and hopeful. The situation wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a while, she didn't feel alone. They laughed and shared stories, and by the time the evening ended, Isolde felt a little better. When they left the restaurant, Caius insisted on getting her a cab, worried about her comfort. "Thank you for tonight," Isolde said quietly as they stood outside. Caius smiled. "There's no need to thank me. We're in this together now." When the cab arrived, Caius opened the door for her. Isolde hesitated for a second, then leaned over and kissed him softly on the cheek. "Good night," she whispered, then quickly got in the car. Caius stood on the sidewalks, kinda touching the spot where Isolde had kissed him. Despite everything, he smiled, feeling hopeful. As the cab drove through the streets of Chicago, Isolde rested against the seat, her mind full of thoughts. She knew the road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a little hopeful. She promised herself that she would do everything she could for her baby, and now, at least, she wouldn't have to do it alone. The next weeks brought a new routine for Isolde and Caius. Isolde worked in human resources, and their office meetings were less often, but each glance and smile they shared had new meaning. One busy afternoon, Isolde felt a sharp pain in her stomach and gasped, leaning on the nearest table. "Isolde, are you okay?" her new boss, Sophia, asked with a worried voice nearby. "I'm fine," Isolde replied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired, nothing to worry about." Sophia looked at her, not quite convinced. "Maybe you should go home and rest. Your maternity leave is starting soon anyway." Isolde nodded, feeling thankful for Sophia's kindness. As she packed up her things to leave, her phone buzzed with a message from Caius. "Can we meet tonight? I have something important to talk about." Isolde's heart started to race. Over the last few weeks, she and Caius had become closer. They shared many things about their lives, but there were still many secrets and unspoken words. A few hours later, Isolde met Caius in a small park near her apartment. The sun was setting, casting a golden light on the trees, making the place look almost magical. "Hi," Caius said softly. His smile tried to hide the worry in his eyes. "I'm tired," Isolde admitted, "and a little nervous. What do you want to talk about?" Caius took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to speak. "Isolde, there's something you need to know about me, about my past." He paused, staring off into the distance. "I was married before, 5 years ago." Isolde felt a little shocked. "Oh," she said softly, "what happened?" "She died," Caius answered, his voice filled with sadness. "In a car accident. I was driving." The silence between them felt heavy, filled with sadness. Isolde gently touched his arm. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "That must have been awful." Caius nodded, his eyes starting to tear up. "It was, and for a long time I blamed myself. I worked all the time, pushing everyone away until the night we met." He turned to face her, his eyes searching hers. "Isolde, you brought me back to life, and this baby, it's like a second chance, a chance to make things right this time." Tears ran down Isolde's cheeks. She was moved by his words. "Caius, But before she could finish, a sharp pain suddenly shot through her. She gasped and bent forward. "Isolde!" Caius cried out, worried. "What's happening?" "The baby," she managed to say between gasps. "I think it's time." Everything happened quickly after that. Caius quickly helped Isolde into her car and rushed to the hospital. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his face full of worry. At the hospital, the doctors took Isolde for an exam. Caius stayed right by her side, holding her hand and speaking words of comfort. The pain was strong, but his presence made Isolde feel better. Hours passed. Each time the pain came, it was stronger than the last. Caius never left her side. He whispered encouragements, saying, "You can do it. You're so strong." Finally, after what seemed like forever, they heard the loud cry of a baby. Isolde cried tears of happiness and relief. Caius, with tears in his eyes, cut the umbilical cord. "It's a girl," the nurse announced, placing the tiny baby in Isolde's arms. Caius leaned over to look at her. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice full of love. Isolde looked from the baby to Caius, feeling so much love for both of them. "She is," she agreed, "our little miracle." At that moment, holding her newborn daughter with Caius beside her, Isolde felt that all the tough times and fears had been worth it. But little did they know, this new life they were starting would come with many challenges. After the baby was born, Isolde stayed in the hospital to rest and learn how to be a mom. Caius worked during the day and stayed with her at night. News of the baby spread through the company, and people started talking. One afternoon, when Caius was at the hospital, his secretary, Linda, came to him. She looked serious. "Mr. Roth," she said, "there are rumors going around about you and Miss Matthews." Caius's stomach twisted with worry. He had been expecting this. "Linda, what kind of rumors?" he asked. Linda hesitated, then said, "A woman showed up at the office today. She says she's your ex-sister-in-law and she wants to talk about your late wife." Caius felt like everything around him was spinning. He had been trying to forget his past, but now it was all coming back. "Thank you, Linda," he said quietly. "Please schedule a meeting with her for tomorrow." As Linda left, Caius looked over at Isolde, who was sleeping peacefully with their baby in her arms. His heart ached thinking about the difficult times ahead. He knew he would have to face the rumors at work, but most of all, he knew he would have to tell Isolde the full truth about his past, the secrets he had kept for so long. He sat by her bed, taking her hand and looking at the peaceful face of his daughter. He made a promise to himself, no matter what came next, he would protect his new family. But deep down, he felt a storm was coming, one that could shake everything they had just built. The next morning came too soon for Caius. He barely slept, haunted by nightmares of the car accident that took his first wife. Now, sitting at his office in Roth Tech, he was preparing for the meeting that could change everything. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Roth," Linda said softly, "your visitor is here." "Send her in," Caius replied. The woman who walked into his office was the image of his painful memories. It was Catherine, his late wife's sister. She looked much older than the last time he saw her. "Catherine," he said, his voice cold, "what brings you here?" Catherine sat down and looked at him seriously. "I've heard rumors, Alex, about you and the baby. Is it true?" Caius sighed. "Yes, it's true. I have a daughter." Catherine's face showed pain. "So you've moved on, Alex, while I... Zara's death was a tragedy," Caius interrupted. "I've never forgiven myself for that night, but do you think you can just forget the past and start over?" Catherine snapped, her voice rising. Caius closed his eyes, fighting the guilt. "It's not like that, Catherine. I loved Zara. I always will, but I can't live in the past forever." Catherine stared at him for a moment, then said, "There's something you need to know, Alex. Something Zara and I kept a secret for years." Caius felt his heart race. "What are you talking about?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Zara was pregnant when she died. That night, she was going to tell you." Caius felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. He didn't just lose his wife, he lost a son he never knew about. "Why are you telling me this now?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. "Because you need to know the truth," Catherine replied, "and because Zara deserves to be remembered. Your son deserves to be remembered." The room went quiet, filled with years of pain and secrets. Caius felt guilt flooding him. Meanwhile, Isolde was getting ready to leave the hospital with her baby. She couldn't help but feel worried. Caius had been distant, and the rumors she had heard about him didn't help. As she packed her things, a knock came at the door. It wasn't Caius, but Felicity, an old coworker. "Hi, Isolde," Felicity said, her face serious. I need to talk to you before you leave. Felicity, what are you doing here? Isolde asked, confused. Felicity stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Isolde, there's something you need to know about Caius. Isolde's heart raced. Is he okay? Felicity hesitated before saying, He's fine, but there are rumors about you two. A woman came to the office. She says she's Caius's late wife's sister. Isolde froze. She knew about Caius's past, but the mention of this mysterious woman made her heart tighten. Isolde asked, her voice shaking a little, Why are you telling me this? Felicity moved closer and put a comforting hand on Isolde's arm. Because you deserve to know. You and that baby deserve better than to be caught in the middle of all this, she said. Just then, the baby started to cry. Isolde automatically picked her up, her mind racing with all sorts of thoughts and feelings. Thank you for telling me, Felicity, she finally said. I need to talk to Caius. After Felicity said goodbye and left, Isolde looked at her baby, who had fallen asleep in her arms. Isolde felt a new strength inside her. No matter what was going on, she would protect her daughter. With shaky hands, she picked up her phone and typed to Caius, We need to talk urgently. Meanwhile, in the Roth Tech office, Caius stared at his phone, seeing Isolde's message. It felt like a sign of what was coming. He looked back at Leora, who was sitting in front of him, her eyes full of mixed feelings. What do you want from me, Leora? He asked, sounding tired. Leora looked at him for a long time before answering. I want you to do the right thing, Alex, for Zara, for the baby you lost, and for this new baby you've brought into the world. Caius felt the weight of her words, knowing that the choices he made now would affect not just his future, but also the future of Isolde and their daughter. With a heavy sigh, he stood up. I need to go to the hospital, he said. There's someone I need to talk to. As Caius walked down the hospital hall, it felt like the longest walk of his life. Each step was heavy with worry and fear about the conversation ahead. He could feel the curious stares of nurses and patients, but he didn't care. All that mattered was talking to Isolde. When he reached her room, he hesitated for a moment, then opened the door. Isolde was sitting on the bed, holding their daughter. When she saw Caius, she gave him a sharp look. I didn't think you'd come, she said, her voice calm but full of tension. Caius slowly walked over, feeling like he was walking on thin ice. Isolde, there's so much I need to tell you, he said. She looked at him, her eyes full of concern. Yes, there is. Starting with why you've been distant for the last 24 hours, and who is this woman who showed up at your office? Caius felt his heart tighten. Her name is Leora, he said softly. She was my late wife Zara's sister. Isolde's face tensed up, but she didn't say anything, waiting for him to keep talking. She came to tell me something I didn't know. Caius paused, trying to control his emotions. Zara was pregnant when she died in the accident. She was going to tell me that night. The silence in the room was thick. Isolde looked at the baby in her arms, then back at Caius. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh, Caius, she whispered. I'm so sorry. That must have been terrible. Caius nodded, not able to speak for a moment. It was. And now I don't know what to do, he said. Isolde gently touched his arm. You can't change the past, she said softly, but you can honor their memory by living your life the best you can. Caius looked at her, amazed at her kindness, even after everything that had happened. You're amazing, you know that? After everything I've done in the past few days, he said. Isolde stopped him. I understand that you're going through something hard, but so are we, me and our daughter. We need you, not just here, but emotionally. Caius nodded, guilt written all over his face. I know, and I promise I'll do better. I'll be better for both of you. Just then, the baby started crying again. Isolde gently rocked her, soothing her. She needs a name, Isolde said softly. We can't keep calling her baby. Caius smiled, the first real smile he had in days. You're right. Do you have any ideas? Isolde thought for a moment before saying, What do you think of Zara? In honor of your first wife. Caius's eyes filled with tears, moved by the gesture. Isolde, that would mean a lot to me. But are you sure? He asked. Isolde smiled softly. I am. She's part of your story, Caius, and now in a way she's part of ours too. Caius leaned down and kissed Isolde on the forehead, then kissed his daughter. Zara, he whispered. It's perfect. Just then there was a knock on the door. Before they could answer, the door opened and Leora stepped in. Sorry to interrupt, she said, her voice tight, but I needed to see for myself. Caius stood up quickly. Leora, what are you doing here? He asked. Leora ignored him, her eyes fixed on Isolde and the baby. It's true, she said, her voice full of pain. You really have moved on. Isolde looked from Leora to Caius, confused. Caius, what's going on? Caius moved to stand between Leora and Isolde. Leora, please, this isn't the time or place. But Leora didn't back down. When will the time be right, Alex? When you've erased Zara's memory forever? She asked. Caius's voice was firm. I'll never forget Zara or our unborn child, but I can't live in the past forever. Isolde stepped in, her voice calm. Leora, I'm sorry for your loss. I really am. But attacking Caius or trying to make us feel guilty won't bring Zara back. Leora looked at Isolde, surprised by how calm and kind she was. Slowly, Leora's anger changed to deep sadness. I just wanted someone else to feel the pain I feel, she said, her voice breaking. Caius walked up to her carefully. We remember Leora every day, and we always will. At that moment, the baby began to cry again. Isolde gently rocked her, whispering comforting words. Leora looked at the baby, then back at Caius. Did you name her Zara? She asked. Caius nodded. Yes, to honor her memory, so she'll never be forgotten. Tears filled Leora's eyes. She stepped closer to the bed. Can I see her up close? She asked. Isolde nodded, exchanging a glance with Caius. Of course. Leora gently reached out and touched the baby's hand. The room seemed to calm, the tension easing. She's beautiful, Leora whispered. Zara would be happy to know her memory lives on through her. Caius put a hand on Leora's shoulder. She will always live on in our memories, and now, in a way, she lives on through little Zara, too. Isolde watched this all quietly, feeling many different emotions. There was pain, yes, but also hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could all figure out how to get through this difficult time. The sun started to set outside, casting a warm glow through the hospital window. The four of them, Isolde, Caius, Leora, and little Zara, stood together in a quiet understanding. The future was still unclear, full of tough conversations and hard decisions, but in that moment, there was a feeling that maybe, just maybe, they could move forward together. They could honor the past and look toward the future. The journey ahead would be long and sometimes hard, but with love, understanding, and the strength to face the truth, they had hope. Hope for healing, hope for forgiveness, and hope for a fresh start. After leaving the hospital, things moved fast. Isolde and little Zara were finally allowed to leave, and Caius insisted they come stay with him in his big apartment in downtown Chicago. On a sunny fall morning, Isolde stood on the apartment balcony holding little Zara in her arms. She looked out at the city below. When the door opened behind her, she turned around and saw Caius walk in. He looked tired but happy. Good morning, he said softly, giving Isolde a kiss on her forehead and gently rubbing Zara's head. How are my girls today? Isolde smiled, but Caius could see a little worry in her eyes. We're fine. Zara slept a little better, Isolde said. But what about you? You look so tired. Caius sighed and leaned against the balcony. It's been a long night at work. The people at the office are upset about everything that's happened. They're even asking if I should step down for a while. Isolde nodded. I know. There have been so many rumors about us and Zara. Caius took her hand and said gently, Don't blame yourself, Isolde. It's my choices that led us here, and I wouldn't change anything. Just then, Zara started to make a soft noise. Isolde cradled her, calming her down. What do we do now? Isolde asked quietly. Caius took a deep breath and said, "Maybe it's time for a fresh start for all of us." Isolde looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "I have a country house in Vermont. It's been in my family for a long time," he said. "Maybe we can go there for a while, away from the city and the rumors, just have some peace and time to focus on us." Isolde thought for a moment. Leaving Chicago would mean leaving everything she knew. But looking at Zara in her arms and Caius by her side, she realized that home wasn't just a place. It was about being with the people she loved. "I think that sounds wonderful," Isolde said, smiling. Caius looked relieved. He kissed her softly. "Thank you," he whispered. While they were getting ready to move, Caius's phone rang. He looked at the screen, his face becoming serious. "It's Leora," he said. Isolde nodded, encouraging him to pick up. "She's part of our lives now, one way or another." Caius answered the call, and over the next few minutes, his expression went from worried to surprised and finally to cautious acceptance. When he hung up, he looked at Isolde with a thoughtful expression. "Leora wants to visit us before we leave. She has something important to give us." A few days later, Leora came to their apartment with an old box. She looked more peaceful than before, though there was still some sadness in her eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," Leora said as she walked in. Her eyes fell on Zara, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib. Isolde smiled and invited Leora to sit down. "It's good to see you, Leora. How are you?" "I'm coping, one day at a time," Leora said with a sigh. "But I'm here because I want to make peace and give you something." She opened the box to reveal photos, letters, and small items. These were Zara's favorite things, her most precious memories. "I've kept them for all these years, but now I think they belong to you and Zara." Caius picked up a photo, his hand shaking slightly. It was a picture of him and Zara on their wedding day, both smiling. "Leora, I don't know what to say." Isolde placed a hand on Caius's shoulder, looking at Leora with gratitude. "That means a lot to us. Thank you." Leora smiled through her tears. "I want Zara to meet the aunt she was named after, and I'd like to be a part of her life if you'll let me." Caius and Isolde exchanged a glance. "We'd love that," Caius said. "Zara should meet your whole family." Over the next few hours, they sat together, looking through the photos and sharing stories. There were some laughs, some tears, and a lot of healing. When Leora left, she looked at them with a new light in her eyes. "Take care, and please keep in touch. I want to know how you're doing in Vermont." After she left, Isolde and Caius sat quietly, reflecting on what had just happened. "That was unexpected, but good, don't you think?" Isolde asked. Caius nodded, pulling her closer. "It's like a weight has been lifted off our shoulders. Now we can look to the future without worrying about the past." As they packed for Vermont, there was a new sense of hope in the air. They knew the past would always be there, but now it didn't feel so heavy. Isolde stopped for a moment while packing the photos Leora had given them. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked softly. "Build a life together, even with everything that happened?" Caius turned to her, his eyes full of love. "I think we already are," he said. "It won't be easy, but we're doing it together, and that's what matters." That night, as the city fell asleep, Isolde, Caius, and little Zara packed their things, ready for their new life. The future was still uncertain, but with the love and support they had for each other, they were ready for anything. In the morning, when they arrived in Vermont, the sky was painted with soft pink and gold. The trees around the country house looked peaceful. Isolde was sitting on a swing, holding Zara in her arms. "Happy birthday, my love," Isolde whispered, kissing Zara's forehead. Caius walked up with a tray of breakfast. "Good morning, my girls," he said, smiling. "I can't believe it's been a year already." Isolde leaned against him, feeling safe and happy. "Time has gone so fast," she said. "It feels like just yesterday we were in Chicago, unsure of everything." Caius nodded. "And now, look at us. A year ago we were in the city, struggling. Now we're here in the country and we've built something beautiful." Leora had called the night before. She wanted to come to Zara's birthday party. She wants to see Zara, Caius said. Isolde smiled. Of course she can come. It'll be great to have her here. Over the year, Isolde and Leora had become good friends, even though things started off hard. You know, Isolde said, sometimes I think about how everything happened, how a chance meeting on the street changed our lives. Caius looked at her with serious eyes. I think about it every day, how I almost let fear and guilt stop me from living this wonderful life with you. Just then, Zara giggled, making them both smile. She has your smile, Caius said softly. Isolde squeezed his hand. That's beautiful, Caius. She would be so proud of you. A car pulled up and they looked over, surprised to see Felicity, Isolde's old colleague from Roth Tech, stepping out. What are you doing here? Isolde asked. Felicity smiled shyly. I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I needed to talk to you. Soon, they were sitting in the living room. Felicity explained that things at Roth Tech hadn't been going well since Caius left. The board was making bad decisions. We miss you, Felicity said. Your leadership, your vision. We want you to come back. Isolde was quiet for a moment, then said, what if we didn't have to choose between our old life and this one? What if we could have both? Everyone looked at her, curious. What if we turned this place into a Roth Tech Innovation Center? She said. A place where people can come for retreats and get inspired, away from the stress of the city. Caius's face lit up. That's a great idea. We can still live here and help the company at the same time. Felicity was excited too. This could be exactly what the company needs. The next few hours were spent making plans for the future, and by the time Felicity left, everyone felt a sense of energy and hope for what was to come. Later that night, after Zara had gone to bed, Isolde and Caius were back on the swing, looking at the stars. Are you sure about this? Caius asked softly. About bringing a part of our old life here? Isolde turned to him, her face glowing in the moonlight. I am. Because it's not about going back to the past. It's about creating a future that honors everything we've been through. Caius pulled her close and kissed her deeply. When they broke apart, tears were in his eyes. I love you, Isolde, more than I ever thought possible. I love you too, she replied, her voice filled with emotion. And I love the life we built together. Under the starry Vermont sky, they held each other, grateful for everything that had brought them there, and looking forward to the future. In the house behind them, little Zara slept peacefully, a symbol of the love that had grown from the past and into the future. And in the memory box by her bed, a photo of a smiling woman, the first Zara, seemed to silently bless the family that carried her legacy. The circle was complete. The past, present, and future were woven together in a tapestry of love, loss, and new beginnings. And as the night went on, Isolde and Caius hugged each other on the swing, grateful for every moment that had led them here, and excited for every moment yet to come. Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.